Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? It's 7:02 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. So first item on our agenda is the approval of the last meeting minutes. Wish Hanny was here to thank him for his notes. I saw that you did that in your email to all, Karen. Thank you for that. But let me hand it over for you to, here's Hanny. We'll just wait a second for him to fully connect.
Yeah, in the very last second, I sent a couple of just very trivial changes. They're not.
Okay. So Hanny, welcome. You're muted and on your video's off, but we were just discussing how much we appreciated your detailed note taking from the last meeting. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, sure.
So Karen, what do we got with minutes?
So I just received some relatively minor corrections and edits from both you and Brad. One was a little more substantive, and that was the name of the person at the library that that Doug is working with. And just looking through, I can go through them if you like, but they really are correctional minor edits, nothing substantive.
There was a section about Renee Cunningham, and it is recorded as Renee Garlick.
Yes, that was the correction that Jerry got to me. Thank you.
So I'm comfortable accepting your view that these are all trivial corrections. Anyone, if no one has any other items to correct, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Doug. Janet seconds. Thank you, Janet. All in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand. All opposed? Passes unanimously. We're on our way. And hi, Michael. Welcome.
Hi.
Okay. Next item, chair's update. So I do have a few things to update folks on. Regarding the middle school project and the solar installation there, I met with Dave Wood, along with Kate Hodges, Amanda, and Jake. We talked about a number of things, but most of it was about the PV at the middle school. And this is, it's not coming to a head, but it's coming into additional focus because of the special town meeting in January to approve the plans for the school.
There's also a meeting tonight.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, Amanda cannot attend our meeting tonight because she's a member of that subcommittee directly. So make a long story short, I asked Dave directly what his, if he was committed to doing this. And he said, yes, he was. And that was under the direction of the town manager. And so I asked, soon to be non-town manager. I asked Kate, who was attending in his stead, if that was her understanding, and she agreed. So at least, I mean, we'll see how things play out with the new town manager, but Dave Wood is operating under the assumption that the town is committed to this. We talked about the plans that he has for it so far, which he really doesn't have any plans. He has a study from SDA, Solar Design Associates, that has some curious items in it. But he said that was a feasibility study to see what was possible, how much PV could they put on the site, would that be enough, et cetera. And that he plans to move forward with detailed plans once the school has been approved. So he's waiting for the vote in January before he spends more effort or time or money on this. He was particularly interested in the battery. because that's helps him solve the solar saturation issue in town. But there are details still to be worked out, particularly around financing and who controls the solar, who controls the PV, who controls the battery. And that will presumably come out in the more detailed design. Any questions on?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So it's always fascinating. I mean, why is it? I mean, I guess it's because of the situation we have with CMLP, right? Because they're sort of an arm's length. But I mean, I can envision a scenario that at town meeting, people will say, okay, no vote on the school unless it is including that scenario.
Yeah.
Which I think that should happen, quite frankly, because I don't think the school should present a plan without that in place. But I also want to mention, and I don't know if anyone noticed, Acton Middle School just got a big amount of dollars because they put in a whole set of solar panels and batteries. Just happened 2 weeks ago, right? It was in the local Acton newspaper. I don't understand why people can't read what's happening, for crying out loud.
I heard word from Kate, who is the project manager at Acton Boxborough. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, Acton Middle School got like $2.5 million.
They've been working on it for 3 years, and
So what? I mean, right? Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but I mean, we're building a school that will not be ready for another 2.5 years.
So it wasn't even a discussion, it was an argument.
Of course.
With Matt Root, the sustainability sub-chair of the CMS building subcommittee, committee. And he was adamant that all they were going to angle for, all they were going to design to is solar ready, and then they were going to hand off effectively the PV portion, anything relating to energy, to CMLP. It's a division of labor. And I think, Brad, maybe you can elaborate on this, but my understanding from you, Brad, is that this business of it being solar ready goes way back to an amendment on a previous town meeting article. Is that correct?
Right. We made an amendment that the design it be all electric, solar, net zero ready. And there was a reason we did that, because we didn't want CMLP or anyone else to kill the whole proposal. And in my view, as long as it's built and we can make a good argument that and CMLP supports it with this solar array, I think it's a good solution.
But let's envision a scenario where let's say the town votes for it, but then there is no agreement with CMLP.
Then we own CMLP.
Well, it doesn't seem so to me. I mean, from what I've seen in the past 10 years with CMLP, it's like CMLP owns itself.
Right. Then we force the issue.
Yeah.
The
We raise
building,
money to do it. We get it done. But I was at a meeting yesterday where someone, and I'm not going to mention any names, said, "Oh, they've just eliminated all the sustainability features for the middle school." And what she meant was she wasn't sure whether they would build a solar panel array. In fact, they've done an excellent job so far at making a middle school that is half of the energy use of per square foot as the high school, and it's going to be all ready. And so I didn't have much patience for that, for that person's comments, because they're trying to build a school. They're not trying to build a energy generation facility. So I'm convinced that we can get a solar array built probably on day one.
But under that scenario that you're talking about, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but let's take the example, and look, some decisions were made, and fair enough, right? But let us imagine that we're building a new house, right?
Yeah.
Would we build a new house that is not solar? Or would we say, oh, gee whiz, no, CMLP will give me solar energy?
It's,
I mean, that's really sort of the same thing, isn't it?
no, it has a lot to do with the funding and the ask. So the risk of getting the school voted down isn't at town meeting. It's at the election in March, I believe. I think it's going to be in March, is a town-wide election. And there are people who don't show up to town meeting can decide, we don't want to vote for this. It's too much. And they just put everything, put all the bells and whistles on it.
Well, one of the things I'm worried about is the lines of authority around who's going to manage the process.
Right.
I mean, clearly it's CMLP, but it seems to me in CMS, they have tried to take their hands off being responsible for the monitoring of the energy efficiency of the school.
No, they haven't.
No,
I can comment on that. That is in fact the case. The school, their attitude is they want nothing to do with the PV, either the installation or the operation, particularly the operation. And so they made that very clear. And I pointed that out to Dave, and he said, yeah, he'd heard that too. So while I'm not happy of this particular division of, I don't know, responsibility, I guess, it is what it is. And it doesn't look good compared to what other towns have been able to achieve. But I think we will end up getting the PV there. I think there are benefits to both CMLP and to CMS. But there is this risk of kind of the town meeting going a little awry because it hasn't, we don't have enough information on that. In fact, I mentioned to Amanda to relay to Dave, because this occurred after the meeting I had with him, but that I think he needs to be prepared at the town meeting to answer questions like this and answer them fairly directly and definitively. Because I think otherwise, if there's any uncertainty in the populace about whether we get a net zero building or not, it won't be good for the school.
when you talked to Dave Wood, did you have any conversation with him about where the funding
Yeah.
for the PV array was, if
Yeah.
CMLP does it, is going to come from?
So there's basically two different avenues to finance this thing. One is working out a power purchase agreement with a third party who would fund, install, and operate the PV and battery. The other alternative is for CMLP to fund it, in which case they'd have to issue a bond to raise the money for it initially. I asked him specifically if he had any concerns, because he seems to be leaning towards a PPA. I asked him if he had any concerns about getting sufficiently low quote from PPA providers, and he said he was not. So that's where that is. So there is some uncertainty going forward about the financial arrangement and the operational arrangement, but Dave seems like there's plenty of time to work these things out, and that he'll begin to focus on that once the building is the proposals approved. Anything else on CMS before we move on?
Yeah, Jerry, do you know if there was any discussion about them tapping into the Massachusetts Smart Solar Program?
I'm not aware. And so I don't know if they have or they haven't. Is that available to MLPs?
Yeah, and there's really, really large, big incentives with that. And they have adders depending on how the solar gets installed. If it gets installed, for example, in a parking area as a canopy, you get a certain adder, another penny per kWh. If you have batteries, there are very big incentives for batteries. And the PPAs, there are many companies out there that do this, this is their business, and they go out and they get financing, and they make it worth, they'll take care of everything. They'll install it for you, they'll run it for you. You don't have to pay the energy. So you get the energy offset, and then you get a revenue stream on top of it.
Yeah. Could you send me a link to that, either offline or in chat? I'd like to understand the details of that a little more.
Yeah.
Is that a new development?
The SMART program has been intact for about 3 years now, and they keep refinancing it. It's complicated. They have several blocks.
But I didn't think we were eligible for it.
The MLPs?
Yeah. At least I didn't think so before.
That was my impression, although I could be wrong.
Well, if it hasn't been brought up in discussion, maybe that's the case. I thought they were. I mean, I think, I don't think it's available for. Anyway,
I know
we
that.
can look into that. Yeah.
I know that other towns such as I think it's Harvard or Princeton, I forget which one.
There is a program.
Braintree, they had battery installations funded, I think, through that program. Braintree's an MLP. Actually, they both are MLPs. Yeah, I don't know. So if you send me a link, I'll take a look. All right. Next up, I imagine everyone has seen Brad's email, but Brad, you want to tell the group directly what your plans are here?
Well, I think I'm thinking I'd like to drop off the committee and allow that seat to be filled, but still stay involved, with CSEC and the efforts that we are making. I've just been on the committee a long time, and I also felt some personal conflicts because I'm trying to push our nonprofit forwards, and I want to make that's my main effort, during the day, and I don't want to feel like I'm trying to sell it to the town that I'm also on the board that uses that stuff. So I don't think it would make much of a big change. We don't spend lots of time voting on stuff anyway. And the way this committee operates is very open, until it decides not to be, but I think it's very open to people, working together with it.
Yeah, my 2 cents is, as you know, but I'll tell everyone the same things I've told you, that I sure hate to see you go. But I do expect, not in a negative way, but in a very positive way, that we'll be seeing plenty of you and being, that you'll continue to be involved with us directly and indirectly. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to mention this to everyone in the group.
Yeah, thank you.
So
I had a chance to read the vision statement that you had put out with the stuff that you sent out. Are you going to talk about that and present that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's coming up.
I also want to mention something that I did this month, which was I took a tour of the new library extension. And if you remember, there was, we made some noise originally. Is it going to be sustainable enough? And, why don't you replace the windows and stuff like that? We were disappointed at first at the way that was going. It's an amazing project. I am So I happen to be I happen to be looking in the window, and Di Clymer, who's one of the main people and fundraisers there, gave us a tour, and it's fantastic what the library has done in building that atrium connecting to the new building. It's really something to look forward to, and they have not skimped on, windows or anything, as far as I can tell.
Did you have a chance to see the heat pump array that was up in the 3rd floor of the old building?
No.
That was pretty amazing too. I got a chance to see that.
Well, this is maybe a good segue into the next things that I wanted to bring up.
Sharon's got a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Sharon, go ahead.
Going back a little to the SMART program, I looked it up, and the second sentence is eligible projects must be interconnected by one of the 3 investor-owned utilities.
Yeah,
So it sounds like we do not apply.
I just saw that too. So, yeah, I
Sorry.
was thinking back my days at the MWRA, which is a state governmental organization. I guess I assumed that it was available for municipalities and government-run organizations also, but I saw the same thing. So it needs to have an IOU connection, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks for digging that up, Sharon. So I want to relate a couple of other meetings I had, one with Janice Setti at CMLP and the other with Rainey Cunningham at the library with Doug. The main agenda topic was sort of brainstorming with her over what the library could do with us for our sustainability series. And I think the short answer is they're tentatively very positive on doing that. So Doug, do you want to elaborate, since you were kind of the ringleader on this one?
Essentially, from a time frame point of view, first of all, they're interested in doing collaborative programming with CSAC. And we talked, one of the things I shared with her was the vision statement that Brad, you had put out that you're going to talk about later, that had elements that were inclusive of the library in it. And I think that they have a committee which is in the library that was a steering committee for the original document that they put out, which is a sustainability overview. It's like this sustainability study for the library. But what they haven't done is they haven't forwarded it to the implementation steps now that it's all getting built. That they have to now plan the programming that they're going to have in place over the next 3 or 4 years. And that committee is sort of in a formative stage. They really haven't put it together yet. I think they're going to start with the group that was part of the library steering committee and reform it. And then I asked them if it would be possible to be, when that committee comes and meets again, which I think is going to be sometime in late January, maybe February, that we could participate, maybe go to that meeting and be a part of it. The other thing is, Rennie suggested that we meet again not until early February, because they're still trying to work out a number of details in the library itself. One thing that they explained to me, I suspect that we didn't know this, but there's a new library director for the whole library that just started literally this week. And she's trying to get her on board with things. And she said she would report all the discussions that we had had with her about wanting to collaborate better to the new director and try to establish a platform for what we want to do. One thing she showed us is there is an area in the library, if you go into the reading room, now it's in the corner of the room and it's kind of tucked away, but it's a little kiosk of all the sustainability related materials. And that's consistent with an idea that we've been working on to give them an incentive to create a sort of a physical dashboard of the town goals and the town directions in as far as sustainability goes. I know that a lot of the materials are available on the town website and the dashboard, but a lot of people aren't quite aware of them. And it's a part of this has to do with clarifying what is on the town website so that it's more openly understood and available in the context of the library as a physical representation of that information. What else can I say? I think in terms of concrete steps of what we need to do to move forward with them, we talked to them about developing the brochure that we have, that is available in the library in quantity right now. And one of the things that it struck me in one of the things we're going to hear about when Brad talks about his plan is the what's the word, Brad? A cafe, a garden,
World Cafe.
a world cafe. The notion of the world cafe that we might be able to hold over at the library, to me and to Jerry, was along the lines of covering the brochure and having an open discussion that follows those new meeting style guidelines that you're recommending, Brad, which I hope you speak to a little better because I don't fully understand them.
So we'll get to Brad's presentation here in a moment. I think that will.
We haven't made a concrete commitment to actually do anything with them until we get this thing baked a little further down the line. And I think another thing that seemed to be at issue, she was more of an advocate of trying to develop cooperative programming for the September timeframe. And when they do Climate Preparedness Week, again, next year, they're planning to do another thing. We could very much coordinate with developing the programming with them on that. The question was whether we still wanted to try and do something in the Earth Week timeframe of late April, May. Maybe we could give a primer or something, a World Cafe session around the brochure.
So yeah, I'd like to kind of wrap up this part, Doug, and move on because we're running behind schedule. But
question. I just wondered, Doug, if you could give some examples of what is in that kiosk and whether it would be helpful for CSAC in some way to publicize what's in that kiosk.
One of the things that they have is they have a lot of disaster preparedness topic brochures, which come from CREED, which are part of the people that help sponsor Climate Preparedness Week. A lot of it, that focus of their Climate Preparedness Week was more around disaster preparedness and less about what you could do to convert your home to a sustainable home today. But they still have, so one of the brochures is also that brochure that we made 2 years ago. And it just needs to be, in my opinion, more publicized and used potentially, or maybe it needs to be modified. I mean, maybe there's a certain amount of material that is, we have a certain physical number of those brochures left. They have all of the remaining brochures at the library.
Well, I actually have a few here. There's a few
There's a
more.
few around. There's a few around, but there's a lot. Most of them are at the library.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of whether we want to reconsider that at all.
Yeah, so very briefly, to wrap up, as Doug said, they're due to some changes at the library, they're not quite ready to make things concrete with us, but they're very interested in doing so. They're willing to host meetings at the library if we want to do things in person. They're willing to promote our events. It was a very positive meeting, I would say, but we need to bake our stuff a little more. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. But that's, I think, the next thing is we need to bake our stuff and then go back to them and talk a little more concretely about what we want to do and how they can do it with us. So I had one other meeting I wanted to just briefly describe, and that was with Janice Setti at CMLP. This was about, actually, I think I've had 2 meetings with her now since our last CSEC meeting. The topic was what are they willing, or what do they wish to do with us? And to make a long story short, he is not terribly supportive. I don't think there's any fundamental reason there. It has to do with the amount of work they have to do in Q1. There's a number of changes they're making to programs, both some of CMLP's programs as well as the relationship with Abode. He was more supportive of doing something in the fall. So the takeaway here was 2 things. She will talk to Abode about what they might be willing to do or what might be appropriate to include in our series. And then she and Amanda and I will get together and talk about funding and, you know, what, if anything, CMLP can do to help us promote our events. So that's the chair's update, maybe a little extended. Any questions before I move on to Amanda's update? Even though she's not here, I'll give it for her. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, she has a conflict. She's at the CMS Building Committee's meeting tonight. They'll be discussing the special town meeting, as well as well, she also, in her update, she wanted to mention that CMLP is planning to do a smart meter rollout next year in 2022. It'll probably take both 2022 and 23 to do. And they're also planning to start a time of use pilot sometime next year. This will make Brian Folds very happy. He's been wanting them to do this for quite a while. There's also a municipal fleet electrification study that's underway that I don't know if she's heading it up or if she's just involved in it, but at any rate, apparently the town is taking stock of all municipal vehicles and they want to look at where does it make the most sense to replace those with electric vehicles.
Can I ask you a question, Jerry?
Sure.
Is there a preferential rate that is used for charging electric vehicles?
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
There's a, you can get, well, I think there's 2 things, but the more recent, the more popular, I think the other one might be going away, is that you can get a bill credit if you schedule your EV to charge overnight. And it's a $10 a month credit if you have a full EV and a $5 a month credit if you have a plug-in hybrid.
But you have to have a special circuit for that, right?
No, you do not. You can just take a photograph of your charging schedule and send it to them. They say it needs to be renewed every 6 months. I've been a participating program. Janet, has anybody else been participating in the program?
Yes.
I haven't
think
actually been asked to renew it after 6 months, so I don't know. I guess
Is it called, is it referred to as the EV Miles program?
Yes.
That you can go on the website. I just got it today. It was advocated to me, and it looks pretty easy to do.
Okay, and then these electric stations, charging stations, like there is one on Main Street, is that operated by CMLP or a private entity?
I believe that's a private entity.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all charge point. So the money goes to charge point. I mean, I think they're certainly installed by CMLP, but the money that you pay for charging does not go to CMLP, goes to charge point.
Because they're very expensive.
One of the things that I talked to Pam Katie this week, just to get some more information about what was going on at CMLP relative to some rebate stuff that I've been working with. She said that they're moving in the next year to 2 years, not exactly clear when, to a universal rate structure, not to have preferential rates for certain programs.
Yeah, that's what I think.
That defeats the purpose of what they're doing with all the metering and everything.
I know. They're like,
I think you got it wrong. What Jerry described is what they're moving towards is having time of use rates, and that's why they're putting in all these special smart meters.
That's my understanding as well.
The people who use a lot of electricity get charged for using more than a certain amount. Is that what Doug's talking about?
well, I think the time of use rate, they're moving to a time of use rate metering system. But before they get to the metering system being installed, they have these preferential rates in the current environment. But once they get to the time of use type metering, so that they can meter people at a different rate at peak hours from off-peak hours, it'll
Well, the
be,
intent is that should even out the load.
Mhm.
There'll be, and effectively there's economic signals to encourage people to not contribute to the peak. So
right.
that's the thinking behind the time of use rates.
Well, traditionally, time of use rates have been because it's cheaper to use the base load electricity at night. But as we're moving to more renewable, that hopefully will cease to be true.
Yeah.
The wind still blows
Okay.
at night.
The wind still blows at night. Yeah.
Yeah. So finishing up Amanda's update, hopefully you all saw her email with a couple of attachments. One attachment described something that I've noted in my notes, and I'm calling the Nexus Guidance. Basically, the town has been approached by an organization that's focusing on, I'm forgetting the acronym is DEI, equity and involvement, diversity, equity, and involvement. Inclusion, yeah. So there's an organization that wants to work with Concord. They're working with a number of communities. They want to work with Concord on, these are my words, not hers, injecting DEI considerations into whatever we do. And as a town, we need to decide whether we want to sign up for this. So what Amanda is asking for here is basically for us individually to look at the proposal and send her our thoughts, good, bad, indifferent. Should we participate or should we not participate?
They discussed this at CAB yesterday as well.
Right. You want to report anything on that, or?
I think it was seen as a distraction from what we're working on, and in fact, it's not that our community does have underserved people in it, but it's not a environmental justice community, and so it's kind of like I don't think people know what to make of it.
Yeah.
But it's certainly proper to keep the DEI lens on in what we do and make sure that everything we do is accessible to all. But for us to kind of revamp everything we do to take DEI into account, I think might be a distraction.
Yeah, I'm of a mixed mind. I think it would be a bit of a distraction, but at the same time, I think it might be valuable for us to effectively get an outside perspective on how we might be able to include DEI in our considerations.
One of the things that, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just like to move on here because this is not our main agenda tonight. But the short answer here is, please take a look at that and let Amanda know what you think. Reply to her directly. Now, separately, there was another attachment on something called Green Futures. And similarly, Amanda wants our feedback on this. Now, this is a different thing altogether. This is a House bill, H.3292. And this is new to me. So let me just ask, is anyone in this group, are they familiar with this or have they heard about this? Okay, so we're all in the same boat. I took a quick look. It looks at a glance, it looks good. It's basically allocating quite a bit of money to various green programs. And the bill describes where they get the money from and where they intend for it to go. So for me, after just a quick perusal, it looked encouraging, but I feel like I need to know more before I can weigh in with her. So my request, which is I'm channeling Amanda here. The request is please take a look at this and let her know directly your thoughts, good, bad, indifferent. Any other comments or questions on Amanda's director's update? Okay. So at this point, let's move into the main meat of our meeting tonight, which is our sustainability series. And to start this off, I'd like to turn the video over to Brad, so he can present and describe what he's proposing, and how that fits with or not with what we've been planning to do so far. So Brad,
Sure.
You're on.
I will take this here. I have to hit the share. So I'm trying to decide whether I've gone off the deep end or not. But, are you seeing what I see? Let's see, what is this?
Yeah.
Will the Concord Climate Challenge.
Right. So I've been thinking about a lot of things. And to some extent, I would make the statement that we probably all lose sleep because of climate. That's why we're here. And we want to do whatever we can the most effective thing around lowering emissions. And it's not just lowering emissions, there are other things that are important, but that's, in my mind, the biggest thing. So I want to ask the question, what can we do to most effectively have the biggest impact? And I've been thinking about what we've done recently, and I'm not entirely happy. We produced a pamphlet last year, We're thinking of holding a series of events, but the real question is, how will we know what impact we had? And how will we know if anybody does anything? And if I think of having a, and I don't want to pick on anything, but if we had a talk and we talked about the pamphlet, and we handed out the pamphlet, I think we'd get a lot of the greenies like us coming, and they'd love it. And a lot of people would go home and they would recycle that pamphlet. And, that might be the end of it. That's my worry. Similarly, you can have speakers and things like that, but it's really hard to say, what are we accomplishing? But I do think back at the Cooler Concord Fair, where we did accomplish a lot, some serious emissions reduction, plus some things that persist. Not only emissions reduction and some rebate programs that are still in place, but also some organizations that are pushing the same thing at other schools around the state. And the committee has also done things like Solarize, Green Your Heat, Heat Smart, where people signed up and did stuff. And those take a lot of work, but those to me are impactful. I've been reading this book. I'll talk about the book in a minute. And it gets me to think about, could we do something kind of longer term, but really get a significant fraction of Concord's households lower emissions? And, it's not impossible. It's a question of whether it's achievable. And this is asking a lot. We're asking people to do stuff because of the social cost of carbon. Not that they ever have to pay it. Somebody else has to pay for our emissions somewhere else, a later time. But this is a really big ask. And the point of this book, that I'll talk about, is really, in order to convince people to really do big changes like that, you kind of need a lot of support. And in this model, it's support from neighbors. So I've been thinking about it, and what I'll talk about is, let's think about if we could start something, and we'd have some decision points along the way, but could we do a program that reached a large fraction of Concord's households? And I don't mean reach them this spring, but reach them over a few year period. And some outcomes, if we were able to do it, we would reach our 2030 climate goals early. And people would save money, and other communities could follow our example. And why now? There's a lot of reasons why to do this now, but the real reason is it can't wait. Things are just looking a little worse and worse in terms of the ability for us to stop this emissions growth. And of course, it has to happen worldwide. But we need progress soon. But we also have support coming from the state and the federal government. We hope the federal government. New mass save rebates are going to be very significant in Concord. We're going to be eligible for stuff that we weren't eligible for before. And there's going to be expanded tax credits. Technology is really ready. It's not perfect, but electric vehicles and heat pumps are a great solution. They're challenging, and we got to change mindset if people are going to use them. Now, a lot of what the Light Plan is working on, they're very busy. Jan is so busy. I can understand why she doesn't want to necessarily volunteer to help us out, but they're doing some really great stuff. The electricity is getting cleaner, and this Clean Comfort program is fantastic. And there's going to be decarbonization audit services, which is going to be fantastic, I think. And also this this web platform we're working on, I think, is nearly ready to do something big with. And I'll have to convince you of that. Now, here's my inspiration. It's this book called Social Change 2.0. And I highly recommend it, and I'm willing to lend this copy to somebody. This guy, David Gershon, who wrote it, I've actually exchanged emails with him. It was a little disappointing because I don't think he read mine. It's about, the last chapter is about an empowering a climate change movement. And he's been thinking about this for a long time. He wrote a book a number of years ago called The Low Carbon Diet, and some of you may be familiar with it. In fact, it turns out the low carbon diet is why the group Concord got started. They wanted to push the low carbon diet. This was before I was part of them. There's a model that they've been working on. So here's a quote from the book. People are really willing to change if they have a compelling vision and are provided tools to help them bring it into being. But their model really uses local teams working together to address challenges. And they're not always climate challenges. A lot of them are about disaster preparedness and about neighborhood livability and things like that. He developed something called eco teams back in the 1990s that were used at that time and getting 25 to 50% participation within cities. Kind of the level we want, if we could do it. The current thing I'd urge you to look at is called the Cool City Challenge in the Cool Blocks program. Now, a lot of what he presents is so closely related to what I've been working on with our nonprofit that it's sort of like, wow, I wish I had read this a while ago, because they know a lot. It's just a question of whether it would work for us if we could make it work. I talked to a woman yesterday who's running one of their cool climate challenges in Petaluma, California. And I'm familiar with it. It's out in, I think it's in Marin County. They have a population of 60,000, so they're a bit over 3 times what Concord is in size. We had a great conversation. They got $1 million grant from the Empowerment Institute to run this program over a 3-year period. So it's kind of a similar time scale. Actually, the first thing they did is they recruited block team leaders, the eco team leaders. They have 300 people that are volunteering to lead these teams. That's kind of astounding when you think about it. But it's—
How big a city is it?
It's 60,000 people. And so the blocks are geographic, and that's important because it's inclusive. You can do a program, the one I'm thinking about starting is going to be more along organizations, but to be successful and include everybody, you kind of have to knock on all the doors. And there's a model for that. And their program, their challenge includes emergency preparedness, carbon reduction, water stewardship, which is important here, but it's really important in California, neighborhood livability, and empowering others. I'm not as familiar with exactly what those are or whether we would need them, but maybe we could do something more focused. So what I'm, I don't know if we could do this. But I think we could try to give it a start and see if we can develop some momentum towards it. And my thought is, during our spring of 22, we start with, we try these World Cafe events, 3 or more of them, identical events, maybe in West Concord, West Concord Library, the school, First Parish. There's places we could do this, but they would be kind of identical, just different people, groups of people sitting at tables. And this model is something that people have been promoting for a time. You have a facilitator that presents questions for discussion at a table. They suggest a couple of questions like, what are your fears around global warming? and what provides you hope that we can solve this problem. But this is a way of getting people to open up, and we could use it as kind of an introduction to a challenge for the people who are attending, and how to, find out your carbon footprint and your, opportunities for lowering it, the big hitters. And our goal could be to get some teams started, a few teams, and recruit some leaders for a larger challenge. But we have to see how this goes. Now, what I put in the doc I sent around also is that, you'd start with a single event, and then these teams would go and they would have some kind of regular meetups to talk about the different topics: home heating, transportation, lighting, appliances. Those are just my ideas of what the meeting topics would be. And these meeting topics could be the similar type of World Cafe model. There wouldn't be a lot of talking at people, but introducing a topic and opportunities, and having people decide what they could do, what they wanted to work on. And my thought was, we could provide a 10-minute introduction material to meetings like this, maybe videotape it, and by doing that, it could be something that gets reused when we start having a lot of these of block teams, if we get that far. But really, participants would work together to decide how they could take action. This, let me know if you think if it sounds like I've gone off the deep end, because I wasn't thinking in this terms a few weeks ago, but I'm kind of inspired by the model that I've read about. But encouraging people to take actions, and also consider new actions. Figure out what actions we need to have. Share testimonials on what they've done. Share ideas that could be taken up by other groups. And then, if we got through, if we can develop some momentum, we can decide whether we want to try to do this all-town challenge, which is, trying to divide the town up into neighborhoods and having leaders within those neighborhoods try to start an eco team and see where they can take it. And the book suggests, involving a lot of students, because people can't say no to students. So I'm pretty much through with what as far as I got. In order to be successful, we would need support. We would want the town to embrace this. This is if we wanted this longer program where we really push on it, we'd have to have Concord say, cheerlead this effort. And we'd need the participation of many groups. If everybody said, it's a nice idea, but we're too busy, this would be pretty dead pretty quickly. We'd also need to get money, because I think we would need to, we need a person hired by the town probably to run it. Now, if we compared to Petaluma, we might only need something like a $300,000 grant to run a program for 3 years. But those funds could be for administrating the program, someone to do that, promoting, producing content. And, we need to, our nonprofit is going to be working on website upgrades to support some of a lot of this stuff. And here's a timeline I could envision for trying to get to April with these World Cafe events. And, you know, we'd have to decide to do whether to do it, form an organizing team. I think we should start to try to seek some funding in the, you know, in the January timeframe. Seek commitment from a couple of organizations including First Parish. I've kind of already reached out to them. I already had done that, thinking, you know, I want to challenge our congregation. Let's see what we can do. And we'd have to prepare, you know, we would work on templates for the presentations. And then there would be a couple of months for more detailed work on what those, on, you know, the World Cafe and the presentations on the 8 topics, updating content on the website, scheduling events, working on promotional materials, recruiting team leaders, you know, mobilizing students and businesses to do some outreach, and then get to you know, Earth Month, and you know, promote events and try running these World Cafe events. And these could be, you know, I think this is a lot of work, but it's not a ridiculous amount of work. It's especially considering, you know, we should have help from these other organizations. Concord Can is excited about this. I talked to the steering group yesterday to sort of test fly some of this. And we don't have to commit to something long-term.
Have you talked to Mothers Out Front?
I have emailed them. I was really hoping that at least one of them would be tuning in for tonight's meeting. So, you know, there are some things that this could fall on its face, because Mothers Out Front could say, you know, it sounds too hard. We don't want to do it. I've already experienced with the website that it's hard to get people on board. Even with this group, I've invited people to, you know, go on board. Hey, create a profile, try some stuff. I haven't gotten very far. I haven't gotten very many people to do that. But this is trying to drum up momentum so that we can have a lot of people do stuff together.
It clearly takes a lot of leadership to get these things going, and it also takes clarity in what different people are supposed to do. And it can sound like a noble cause without having a way to connect into it precisely so that people are really moving it ahead. I think in the last year, we've suffered in our own way from not being able to create better traction in certain things that we're trying to do. And it strikes me that to open it up to a multiplicity of groups is going to be all that much harder to coordinate and to make happen, because not everybody knows each other across all these organizations. I know you do in many cases.
I know some people, and part of what this guy's model is people want to know each other and work together, but they just don't. They don't even know their neighbors these days in a lot of these places. In Concord, people tend to know their neighbors, kind of. But a lot of this empowerment is about, you know, sitting down with your neighbors and deciding to do something.
Well, one of the things a question that I have, Brad, is if you leave the group, which I understand, and you still want to stay connected with the group, who's going to, how do you see the leadership to proceed along the lines of what you've crafted here will get done?
Well, so, running some events in April is one thing. And that I think the committee could do a bunch of that, but better to involve, a bit broader group. But ultimately, I think Amanda would need to sort of be a champion of this. And perhaps, if we got a grant and there was somebody who worked for her that kind of administered all, managing, I suggested we might have 80 teams of local teams of localities or multi-unit dwellings or things like that. We'd have to deal with a lot of administration. That's down the road. There would have to be training. You might have to get training from this organization to teach us how to do some of this.
A question that lingers in my mind too is, I understand that you feel that you have a bit of a conflict of interest with the town relative to trying to promote the Cooler Concord stuff and the mass energized stuff.
Yeah.
But we need you. And to provide the kind of leadership that you have provided, even to keep the momentum going, is important to have that your content propels us forward often.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, if you're not at the meetings that we have, then where will the opportunity get created to proceed forward along these lines?
I wasn't planning not to come to meetings,
Oh, okay.
but I might
Maybe
might miss a meeting or two. I would feel better about missing a meeting or two, but I'm not planning to disappear.
if I can paraphrase Doug, I think the question is, who leads this thing?
I have a, if you don't mind, and Brad, I actually thought about it, and I think I actually tried to go on the site, and there are little tweaks and stuff like that, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I always thought, and I've discussed, I've polled a bunch of people in terms of asking a general question. If you wanted to try and conserve energy, what would you do? That's just a very broad question, right? It's open-ended completely. And I think some said, oh yeah, I heard about air source heat pump, but the vast majority of people said, and some said, oh, I could look into electric cars. There's very, very few of them. But the vast majority of people said, I don't even know where to get information. Okay. Right. And I think, I'm sure you end up with the same kind of things. And I think some of the stuff that you have on the site is geared towards that, right? But I also noticed a couple of things in my mind over the past couple of years, is that it seems in Concord, and I don't know if it's in other towns, but it seems in Concord that we have lots of groups with overlapping responsibilities. Right? And that creates confusion. It's not bad, but it creates lots of confusion, right? You have Concord Can, then you have, the CMLP has a program, then the town has a thing, and then you have this committee has something going on. Now you have the mothers out front that are doing something, and it just creates lots of confusion. It's all well-intended, but it's all lots of confusion because there is no single source where I can say, okay, here is the action plan of what you can do right away. And I always thought that the opportunity with the Cooler Concord side was exactly to, that's really what you were trying to do. Here's what he can do right away today, right?
Yeah, that's good.
One is your personal action, and two was, okay, and here are some sources of information about what's available to you from the town to encourage you to do some other things, right? The challenge was, how do you get people to come to see that, to do something and to register and do that, right? And that's really sort of what the challenge. And I always thought that one of the ways of doing that was really sort of some of the programs we were envisioning to try and channel people towards a follow-up. And here is where you can follow up. And then we can record what people are doing or not doing. You can really actually measure the results of any one particular event, which
Right.
is the other thing. You do these events, people talk, and no one ever knows what happens.
Right.
Yeah, it registers, but maybe not, right? So that's sort of how I saw the link, right? And there's definitely a link. The question is, how do we create that sort of funnel that feeds and generates action? And yeah, obviously you can create a grassroots movement, right? Which is what 2.0 is. That's extremely hard. That's probably harder to get people to the site, right?
Well,
So-
right.
I want to, I'd like to follow up on,
Okay, correct.
I'd like to follow up on something Hanny said, because it resonates with me rather strongly. Hanny used the word funnel. And the way I'm thinking about engaging or trying to engage Concord citizens is using the structure of a sales funnel, where initially, sales and marketing funnel, initially the funnel, you're at the top of the funnel, it's very wide. You want to get as many prospects into the funnel as possible. And then, you get all these prospects in, and they may not know much at all, but they have some interest that causes them to get into the funnel. And then you winnow this out a little bit. You find some of them, they really weren't interested. They fall out. The funnel narrows. Now you have a group of interested people. And then a little further along, some of these interested people, well, they lose interest, but some of them maintain their interest and they want to begin making some decisions, and so forth and so on, till at the bottom of the funnel, you've got people who are committed. And so what I'm imagining our efforts, the way I see our efforts unfolding is we need to both provide a wide funnel to get people into the funnel, into thinking about and expressing some interest in what we're trying to do. And then we also need to provide a program for those that come out at the bottom of the funnel in terms of, okay, they're ready to take action. What actions can they take? How can we support them in that? So we have several, in my mind, several goals. And what you're describing, I see, is working towards the bottom of the funnel, which we need. We also need a mechanism to fill the funnel. So,
Well, okay. I think I'm working at the top of the funnel. That
That
is
too.
to say-
If you do grassroots movement is the top, you're feeding the funnel, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of, yeah,
The
both
bottom of the
ways,
funnel
right?
is CMLP and Concord Clean Comfort. That's one funnel. There's the funnel. I guess I see that. I'm seeing a funnel that people
Yeah,
go
and-
into, that you try to get everybody into, and then there's a spigot over here for home heating, and there's a spigot over here for EVs, and you can actually go down both spigots. But there, at this one is the drive and save. The EV. Connecting people with what they need to do for EVs. This is solar over here. It's a little different of a model than a one-dimensional funnel, maybe.
We talked in previous years about the idea of taking advantage of the town database, which is a way of qualifying people or families that have oil heating and or resistance electric in their homes still. And that's a way of narrowing a funnel, at least to create a set of prospects. But we've never done anything much with it beyond think about the idea that that was a good way to get a hold of the right people.
Yeah, this is a different alternative where we try to knock on all the doors.
Hey, could
And-
I ask you,
Yeah.
Doug, could I ask a question on that database?
Yeah,
So that's very interesting to me. I'm just curious how that was generated, when it was generated, and does it cover residential as well as C&I?
it covers
Or-
mostly residential, and it tells location of where people are. And I think it's a listing of everybody that has certain fuel types. So that if you have all electric or you have all oil based, and it's probably not perfect. You know, there may be some changes to it that have happened. I don't know who is responsible for the management or the update of it, but it's
It's the
part.
tax assessor database. It's when your property gets reassessed, someone comes and looks at what you have. It has commercial, industrial, and residential. It has everything. But it doesn't necessarily know when someone switches from oil to gas unless they get reassessed, reinspected. Sorry to interrupt, but
That's all right. So somebody culled this information from the tax assessor's files?
yeah, all you have to do is ask the assessor and he'll send you.
We have an extract that we had created last year. That was a listing from the tax assessor's database of all of the homes that had oil heating in the record. And that was, we were thinking about using that as a mechanism to start a campaign of like going and knocking on the doors of those people or communicating directly with those people in some sort of advocacy program. But we never did anything beyond that. We even had the listing of the extract.
So I'd like to, in the interest of time, I'd like to try and wrap up this discussion or begin to wrap it up now. Those who haven't spoken, are there any comments or questions for Brad? Okay, given that no one else has any comments, I'll then make mine. I didn't want to make these at the opening because I didn't want to influence anybody. But I think there's a lot to like in this proposal. From my perspective, what I like about it is it's aggressive and it's action oriented and it's measurable and it's a different kind of event. It should attract, I think, a different audience than we've attracted before. But I think I see some significant practical issues, particularly in the near term. If we need funding for that, I'm not sure we're going to be able to get that anytime soon. That there's a lead time that's associated with it. This is a pretty large effort, and we've got limited resources. But maybe most significantly is if we want to do something in the spring with this, boy, there's just not much time. When we subtract out time needed for promotion and preparation promotional materials, I think it's tight. So I think in the short term, I'm not sure this is a fit for us, with one exception. There may be others, but as I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if we couldn't do one of these as one of our events, sort of set up one of these as a trial run or try it out with one group, wherever that group may come from, see how that goes, see what we can learn from it. And incorporate that into our overall series. I mean, Brad, I don't know if you were envisioning doing this in lieu of what we've talked about or in addition to or as part of, but what I'm kind of thinking here is we begin to work on this as one of the particular events. and promote it just like we would any of the other events. And it becomes a different sort of an event from the other ones that we've got on the list.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. I think you're right. The time is short. I think the funding that I talked about is really, we would need to seek funding if we wanted to continue it. I don't think we need funding to I don't think we need much funding. I think we should ask Amanda for some money to promote whatever we want to, whatever we do, even if she might not be able to get us the money. But I'd kind of hope to do a couple of them just because I think there's a little bit of an economy of scale. So maybe I am going to be talking to the First Parish environmental team about trying this. That can be separate from CSEC. And do something with the library, for example. There would be two. That's my pushback.
So you're negotiating we're beginning with 3. You're countering my offer of 1.
I don't know.
Okay.
This is all new. Like a lot of this is put together this week.
So I guess before I get into updating everyone on where we are with the sustainable series as envisioned so far, so you said that you were thinking of maybe you do it outside of CSEC. Okay, I mean, that's fine too. But I guess I'm wondering how you see this. What you're presenting this to CSEC.
Yeah.
What are you proposing for CSEC or from CSEC?
I would like some people to put in some effort to develop and correct some of the content on the website.
What, you mean on Cooler Concord?
Yeah. In particular, what things change with CMLP and stuff like that, but also we're missing, I think, a fair number of actions that should be on there about induction cooking. I don't know. I want to solicit testimonials. I want to build that out so it doesn't look like nobody's ever been there. Right now, it kind of looks like nobody's really been there, I think. And I want to build out some of the service provider stuff where we'd like to have a broader range of solar and weatherization and some other contractors you can call to do stuff so that it looks more useful. Those are some things.
Well,
and then promotional materials for to try to get people to come.
So let me give you a couple quick comments on that, and then I'm going to shift gears and present an update on what Amanda and I have been working on. So those sound like reasonable things, except there's a couple of problems. One is we have limited resources. We can look around our virtual table and we see our resources.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're planning the sustainability series. And we can ask for volunteers, but that is likely to detract from our sustainability series. If that's our main thrust, which that's what I understand the group wants to do so far, then this doesn't really fit in with that. If we had an event as part of our series, yeah, then maybe it would. But I think, as a group, we've got to put some stakes in the ground about where we're headed and head off in that direction very quickly.
I I certainly have been hoping that we might be able to take advantage of the library opportunity and include that as part of our series. But
Absolutely.
if we wanted it to model it after a World Cafe concept and try it out just as a trial event, I'd be a big advocate for that. And
Well, that's kind of what I think, what I'm imagining is a way to integrate the two. You know, for example, Brad, instead of focusing and developing on something with the schools, you focus on developing this World Cafe event. And maybe it's with the schools, you know, but it's not a project TBD. It's this
Right.
sort of World Cafe event.
Okay.
Well, let's hold that thought. And let me shift gears one more time and update everyone on what I've been working on with Amanda. So let me find my PowerPoint and display that. Let's see here. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so very briefly. This is the overview. It's not really any different from what we talked about before. Although I guess I'll focus on changes from what we've talked about before. I think here we talked about, you know, hosting an event every week or something like that. Amanda's convinced me to be better to spread them out. So we're looking at, and I'll show you a schedule, an event every 3 to 4 weeks, beginning late April, running into July and possibly longer. And then here, so Brad, you and I talked a little bit. I talked at some length today with Aaron, who's our communications manager in the town, and Amanda. And at the moment, Eventbrite is looking like a likely target for us to use for promotion. More to do on that, though. Here's a description I prepared that we can use as a kind of a elevator pitch for prospects, prospective programs, prospective partners, et cetera. I don't think there's anything new here, but just wanted to let folks know this elevator pitch is available when meeting with someone to say, look, this is what we're doing. So there's that. You all have access to that on the Google Drive. So where we're at right now is, to start with, again, this is not new, but we have a tentative agreement from Carrie Emanuel, Professor Emanuel at MIT, to present. Doug and I are working on the Sustainable Home Now presentation. We discussed this with the library. They were reasonably enthusiastic about this. Nothing different here, although Michael, I'll look to you to update us on latest news on this. And then here's this other one, you know, nothing defined yet, but this is where I could imagine the slot for lack of a better term, this World Cafe event. I've talked to Jan about doing some sort of EV event and or heat pump event. I think I mentioned earlier, she's talking to Abode about what they could do. Nothing on any of these others, not yet at least. Here's the summary of what the event with Carrie Emanuel might look like. It would be over Zoom, tentatively looking at April 13th, which would be just before, a couple days before school vacation week begins. And I see this as, sort of operating at the top of the funnel. Someone who might come to this might be intrigued by hearing from a noted expert directly. And we hopefully could convert some of these people into not just being interested, but then in climate change, but then interested in actually taking action. I mentioned the latest on this, more work to do, both by Doug and myself, as well as with the library, but I'm encouraged by this. Again, I think this would be an overview presentation, briefly hitting the various parts of the Sustainable Home Now. Again, operating at the very top of the funnel, trying to get more people, more prospects into the funnel. This one is reaching out to Concord businesses. Michael, do you want to update us on any news or anything new on this?
Sure. Briefly, or do I have a couple minutes? Because I do have a couple things to report.
Go ahead. Take your time. This one's important.
Yep. Okay. So I did reach out to a couple of stakeholders in town, the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Concord Business Partnership. So some of you may have heard of them already. I did not hear back from the Chamber of Commerce, but I did hear back from the Concord Business Partnership, and there is some interest in coordinating or engaging with us at the very least. And we have tentatively put their next meeting in February on their calendar. So it's very tentative right now. And I've got a call set up for the second week in January or so with the executive director of that group, just to give her a lay of the land for what we're doing, what we hope to achieve. Packaging it as an information exchange. We'd love to hear from the community, and we would love to be able to provide you with some of our resources here in Concord, which I'm not 100% clear with yet, and so we would have to meet on that at some point and figure out that portion of it. In parallel, Brad, I think it was Brad, had sent me an email from someone he's known in the past who was looking at heat pumps, and forwarded that email to me. And I reached out to him, and we had an email exchange, and actually got Pamela Cady from the Concord Municipal Light Plant involved with the discussion. And so, segueing that right into what we might be able to offer the business group, and this is the first, only by way of really not understanding how CMLP works at this point, because I'm coming from a background of IOUs. There does appear to be some incentives for lighting, mainly over the next 3-year period available. And then, of course, National Grid has their rebates for air source heat pumps. And the next 3 years for the investor owns anyway are going to be pretty significant in terms of how they're approaching energy efficiency. We're actually moving more away from lighting and those conventional energy saving technologies that everybody's familiar with, and moving more towards electrifying home heating, which essentially translates into heat pumps for the most part. So for the gas portion of the town, which is serviced by National Grid, there'll be a ground shift in how we approach that, which is positive. It's very positive. And again, for the electric side, for CMLP, it's still vague to me exactly what those programs are. I feel like there's a lot less to offer there, but I just don't really know. However, Katie did offer this $1,000 per kW of reduced demand or 50% of project cost for commercial lighting upgrades. So, you know, those are a couple of things. I think they're working in unison, and by coincidence, they came up literally within the last week or so at the same time, is this offer to present something at the Better Business Council, while at the same time, Pamela Katie from CMLP has offered some things that we can bring to the meeting. So, you know, that's it for now. A couple of other smaller things, but those are the two significant ones.
That sounds like good progress. And that's encouraging that the Concord Business Partnership seems interested to at least begin talking. You know, I think the first thing to do is establish a relationship and begin listening to each other. So I think this is right in line with that. Moving a little more quickly than I had imagined, but that's a good problem to have.
Mike, who is the director that you've been talking to at the Concord Business Partnership?
Her name is Jennifer Clark. She's the executive director, and she was referred to me by a gentleman by the name of Gregory Higgins, who I guess also sits on the council.
Okay. All right, great.
Yeah.
So moving forward here. So this is where, you know, Brad, my understanding is you've met with a number of people at TCHS and CPS, and there's lots of ideas, but it's not clear how this proceeds. Is that a fair summary?
Right. I met with some leaders of the Green Team at CCHS, which is led by Priscilla Guiney. But it was a little bit of get to know and understanding what's important to them, what they're thinking about. It was a pretty good meeting. I think we're going to be talking again in January. They tend to meet early morning before school, which would be fine with me. And I summarized the meeting, some of the ideas that I had about what they could, you know, how we could engage, and I wanted them to think about it. But I don't want to, I kind of wanted them to drive that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll jump ahead a little bit. I think, well, I'll present a schedule here in a moment, but long and short of it is I think we're going to, if these things are going to happen, we'll have to have them nailed down in January, towards the end of January. But I'll show you the schedule here in just a moment. So talking with Amanda, here are the particular promotion plans that we've specifically identified in different categories. Although I haven't spoken, or we haven't spoken with anyone at Concord hoping they would get on board and would promote this through to their Facebook page, etc. We promote through email and newsletters. Library said they're willing to do this for us. Amanda's group obviously could do this. We'd have some print promotions, have some flyers that we post around town. maybe get a bill insert to the CMLP bills. That one's that depends on Jan's availability and as well as funding. I really should have a question mark by that one. Let me do that. Possibly a postcard. Again, depends on funding. That would be specifically on this. Possibly a Concord Journal, although as the days go by, that looks like less and less of a solid option overall journalistically. Various websites, Cooler Concord, the town sustainability website, the library's website. And then there's other possibilities that I just haven't had an opportunity to explore, to contact people on. But the idea here would be to hit multiple channels, and this is the way I'm looking at it. Does anyone see any obvious ones I've missed?
There's one thing I thought of is with I don't know whether it's going to be out yet, but the Concord Independent is there's plans for a new online newspaper, which may eventually be in print. But if that's available, then that would be a good place to put information.
That won't be available at that time.
Will not.
That'll be available in late 2022.
Oh, so it's not really viable for this.
Yeah,
How about a handout?
the next door is where there's a sustainability group on next door, which is a pretty active community. A lot of people subscribe to Nextdoor. There is a site called the Living Concord, which promotes everything going on in town. Those are a couple of things.
There are some Facebook lists for Concord also.
There's a lot of things that,
Yeah.
be honest.
So what are those Facebook lists, Haney?
I'll get you a list. I don't have it. There are a bunch of Facebook lists that my daughter keeps telling me.
Are the Facebook lists neighborhood Facebook lists?
Sorry?
Are they
What?
neighborhood Facebook lists or are they topic oriented?
I'm not sure. I think there is a Facebook list for Concord in general. But I'll get some more details.
Okay.
I don't have them in front of me. I'll get them.
Okay. So here's a schedule that I've worked out with Amanda. And the idea here is to really identify when we need to have things done to make this all happen. And it's kind of driven by this date. So we have to have everything. So we're basically working backwards from our first event. Leading up to that event, we have to have promotional materials that have been distributed, from here. Sorry. To distribute promotional materials, they have to be printed, they have to be designed. And before we can get to that point, we have to have our events solidified. We have to know what they are, how we're going to do them. They'll probably all be over Zoom, or most be over Zoom. We have to have agreement with whatever parties we're working with. So really we need to have all that nailed down, solidified by mid-February. And to make that happen, then I think it's these next two items, or these previous two items, the ones in red, are really what we're facing up to. Namely, by roughly middle of January 20th is our next CSEC meeting. So I aligned it with that date. But at that point, we need some concrete proposals all the way around. So each of the champions will need to, come to the January meeting with reasonably firm details. Ditto for the promotional plan. So what I just showed is, sort of an overview of it. We'll need more details But Amanda and I will work on that. And anyone else who wants to contribute, but no one has really stepped up yet. Let me pause here and ask for feedback and comments.
So Jerry, could you just remind me what exactly the April 13th, that's driving the entire schedule backwards? What does
Well,
that look like that day or that week?
So this is, okay, so the event would be the keynote address. We can, of course, plan this for any time we want, but previous discussions in this committee were around the fact that it'd be good to do something around Earth Day, before Earth Day. And so this is what comes up. Earth Day is the 22nd, but that week, CCHS says school vacations.
Well, when is Musketaquid Earth Day?
Ah, good question.
We have a different Earth Day here in Concord than the rest of the country.
That's a good, guess I didn't realize it was different. That might be May sometime.
I think it's a week later. So let me see.
A question I have is, will the events be based on a sign up where there are acknowledged people that are going to be registered to be a part of it, or is it going to be an open invitation of anybody that wants to come in the last moment? The reason I ask this is because it's one of the problems that the library had with their events in the week in September was even though they tried to promote it, they didn't have any way to qualify their promotions beforehand. And as a consequence of that, they only had 3 or 4 people in some of the sessions.
Yeah, so Amanda and I talked about this, and the idea would be to have people sign up explicitly.
Right.
Part of the reason for that is so that we know how many people are coming. But an equally important, maybe more important, is so that we can capture the list of folks who
Something like sign up genius to do that kind of thing, or what kind of structure might you envision?
So we talked about that quite a bit today. So the town could put something in place, and they're willing to do that. However, it sounds like Eventbrite would be a better option for us on this. I could do everything we wanted. Brad, did you find Musketaquid date?
No, I don't know if it's been scheduled yet. I'm looking on the Arts and Umbrella, Emerson Umbrella site.
So Michael, to your comment, we could move the first event to after Earth Day. That would buy us more time. Be a little,
Right.
The question also, Jerry, was whether it be April 13th or May 13th, what does that day look like? Is it literally a keynote address by somebody to somebody in an auditorium? Is it kicking off a week of events? Or I apologize, we may have gone over this, but I'm just trying to get that clear in my own head, what exactly that represents.
well, Brad, you want to speak?
No, I would suggest that keynote event be done through the something called the Climate Solutions Speaker Series, which is a group that includes Concord Can, it includes all of the congregations in town, includes the League of Women Voters and Mothers Out Front and the schools. It's, we could bring the speaker, but it would be nice to convene that whole group and they would all publicize it. There's been some, that group hasn't had a speaker since the pandemic started. But I think that would get people to come.
So it would be bigger than a CMLP, I mean, a CSAC event. It would be a multi,
That's correct. If,
Yeah, that
um,
sounds reasonable to me. Janet, do you know anything about this?
I agree. I like that idea a lot. I think, you know, I think if you have a keynote speaker and you only have 10 people listening, that's
right.
Right.
so if it's on if it's online, I'm thinking everybody's going to be at home staring at their own computer,
Right.
or is it going to be screened somewhere and when the speaker on the screen and the audience be able to talk afterwards?
Well, my thought, we could do, well, my thought was this would be a Zoom event. And we could set it up and manage it so that the audience could ask questions after the presentation. You know, I'm imagining basically, you know, a conventional kind of a keynote where someone, either you or me, for example, would introduce him and, you know, his background and turn it over to him. He then goes through his presentation. And afterwards, we have Q&A for a period of time.
Mhm.
Is he willing to do a live event?
Is he? Yeah, he is. Well, is he? He's not willing to do a live event because basically he's living up in Maine. So
It's only
You mean
an hour.
live or in person?
I
I thought he was willing to do live.
he's
Live on Zoom.
willing to do live, but not in person in Concord. So do it as a Zoom event. Yes.
I think a Zoom event would be I don't know. I don't see the real value of doing a at-home Zoom event, but maybe I've watched too many.
Yeah. Well, that was my
Well,
thought. But
I think
Brad, what do you mean by a Zoom event? You mean, I mean, I've been to lots of webinars where, you know, you have the speaker and they have a slides and they have this, that, and the other, and then you have questions afterwards. So I think that was what Jerry was saying. Is that
How-
right?
how
I mean,
did,
the audience would be live in a room, but then the speaker would be broadcasted through the Zoom, through some kind of video feed.
So let me just explain what I was thinking, which is not necessarily what we have to do. But I was thinking this would be a classic Zoom event. No people, it would be, he
No
would present.
physical presence.
Yeah, no physical presence. Having a physical presence would be better, but you know, he doesn't want to travel. So, okay, we could work with that. Would not be as good as, well, anyway, we already said that.
But you could have a sort of a hybrid model, right? You could have the main attraction, the speaker via video, and maybe have a panel to answer the questions.
You mean a live panel?
A live panel, so to encourage the live
So,
audience, because
yeah,
I sort of agree that having a whole 100% Zoom event is more challenging, I think.
Well, I think one of the challenges we're going to have to address with any of this is, will we be able to do any of this in person?
Well, look, for example, the meeting yesterday evening, actually before, where are we today? The 16th, before yesterday, the planning board had a combined Zoom and in-person meeting, right? The logistics of that are very, very difficult to manage in general, right? But everyone was wearing masks at the physical meeting. I mean, that's the reality that we can't avoid.
Right.
Who knows what will happen between now and April, right?
Yeah.
So Janet, what do you think?
What do I think? Well, I'm thinking I mean, you've got, if who would be in the panel? I mean, you know, Kerry Emanuel is such an expert, and as you say, he's being inducted into the American Academy of Sciences, and
Yeah,
also
but you bring it, Janet, I think you bring it
who would
local.
be
And
the panel to be qualified to participate in a panel.
I think the panel is the opportunity to link it to the local programs. That's sort of our.
It's
Right.
really a facility. I'm hearing maybe a facilitator or someone to facilitate as a liaison between, because, you know, otherwise you're just going to have questions coming out of nowhere. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the way I've seen webinars work is to have questions going into, into an individual rather than a chat that go into reaction somehow. I don't remember how they go in. I'm trying to think. But the questions are seen by a moderator, and the moderator picks the questions and to address to the speaker.
Right, and you can, I don't know if Eventbrite works that way, but you can have the questions can be opaque to everybody except that moderator, and then the moderator can choose whichever question they feel is relevant to the conversation.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And you can combine questions. I mean, you get similar questions. You can combine similar questions.
I really think this is a sort of an opportunity. You get a renowned person to come and speak about climate in general, right? Globally, this is what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I can have questions about climate globally. Fine, we can all, get educated in climate globally. Fantastic. But again, it goes back to, what do I do tomorrow?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the only way to what do I do tomorrow is to bring in my mind, I thought we bring a local panel about, here are the things that are available for you to do in town. Energy assessment, Adobe, air source heat pumps, EV, you build the link. Now you still can entertain questions with the moderator to the expert, but you also want to bring a link to what people can do locally. I mean, I think that would be an opportunity.
Well, and part of what they can do locally is go to the meeting that's focused on that item.
For example, right.
Yeah, that's a good point. If we have other events that address those items, then we sort of funnel them that way. I shouldn't use the word funnel, but direct them that way.
I mean, have further meetings planned that are topic oriented centric. Those could be the ones that are in the next month or something.
Yeah. So Janet, can you flesh these things out in time for to give us a proposal in January?
I think so. I can try.
Yeah, and I'm happy to work on that with.
I can go to Kerry and get his input on what he'd like to do.
Right.
So Jerry, it sounds like whoever introduces the speaker is going to play a big role in setting the table, if you will. It's just not a talk about climate change, but it's also a talk about climate change and what we can do about it in Concord.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So either afterward or before or both, here are some resources for the people who live here.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I'm thinking, and I still want to push my proposal, even though it was pushed backwards. I'm thinking this is sounding like a pretty incoherent set of events, possibly, unless we think of how to tie it together. And I hope it leads to something meaningful. I don't know.
So you're that comment sounds like to me you're looking at this as an either or.
Well, it's so we'll have this event and then we'll have something on the pamphlet, or we'll do you know, I want to think a little more about how these are tied together, and how they get a lot of people doing stuff. That's the
Well, that all sounds good, but I think, we're at a point where we need concrete ideas.
Brad, part of the conceptualization I have for the cafe, and I think you focused on this in
Yeah.
your understanding of it, maybe I'm wrong, is that it be an open enough discussion so that questions and feedback about the topic are coming in from the participants. And they don't
Right.
have to be experts, because they're going to probably be voicing their own issues and their own experience problems with
right.
doing whatever they're doing. If you make it too much of a directed thing from an expert with pre-selected topics, I don't think people will be as interested in it.
Right. I don't know. I need to think some more about it.
I mean, it seems to me like it is a combination of both, right? And that's my question earlier, Jerry. A keynote typically implies that it's kicking off something larger, events.
Right.
So if this is indeed a way to pique interest in the town with a real expert and get people engaged to kick off something after that, I could see that as being a useful tool. To Brad's point, we do need, I feel like we need to identify what those steps are, those concrete steps, and how we convey that during this keynote speech, if you will. Is this kicking off the Earth Week? It's timed with Earth Week. Is the intent to kick off a series of events? I'm kind of with Brad a little bit in that it's great having the expert, but what's next? I keep going back to that old Burger King commercial, like, where's the beef? Like,
Well-
here we are. What's next? What are
Yeah.
the next steps? Yeah.
So I think in my mind, there's two answers to that. One is we just discussed about after the presentation is over, that we have some local quote unquote experts in what's possible here in Concord to be able to address, what people can do, and yeah, we have to be prepared ourselves to have those quick answers and say, if someone writes in and says, geez, I don't know, this is all frightening to me, anticipating all these changes, what can I possibly do as an individual? Well, it's incumbent upon us to be ready to answer that. And so that's part of the preparation for this event. So that's one thing. The second thing is, in my mind, that again, I go back to this funnel. We need to get people into the funnel.
So
It doesn't matter to me so much how we get them in there. Well, we got to get them in there.
when you
if-
start talking about funnels, that's a sales process that involves content managers and salespeople and stuff like that. That's not people falling into the funnel because they happened to see something and they fell into the funnel, so they got.
So, yeah, so we capture their names and addresses. We get them on our mailing list. We can contact them that way. I think the idea that we meet some people or someone comes to our event and boy, they're ready to go and do things. I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I think we have a range of, I'm going to use a sales term, prospects here in Concord, most of which, like Hanny was commenting, most of which have no idea what they can do what they should do. They're not going to be ready to go put in heat pumps tomorrow if we talk to them today. So I think we've got to be aware that in the set of prospects here in town, people here in town, one message will not apply to all. And they're in different places, and we need to recognize that and realize because that we need to reach out to different audiences with different methods and get them interested. I won't use the term funnel, but get them interested in learning more and possibly doing things. It's a different way, I think, of looking at our audience than we've talked about before.
I think you can use the term funnel. I think it segues nicely into our earlier discussions on the funnel. It's a nice way to capture people, to get an expert there and bring that expertise in. I think people in Concord are quite interested in that. I'm wondering if we could use that as a kickoff for, so maybe after that. So this has been great. This kicks off. By the way, this is CSEC. This is what we're all about. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to be kicking off the next 12 months. And this CSEC organization is going to be spearheading a series of events every month. One is going to be on heat pumps. One is going to be on electrification. One's going to be on lighting. One, whatever, insulation, weather strip, whatever, weatherproofing, whatever it might be. But using that powerful keynote as a kickoff for a series of events afterward, answering the questions and combining the two and answering some questions after he speaks. I think it has some value, but I think it'll get somewhat diluted if we try to combine too much into one night.
I agree with you, Mike. I think it could get confusing if it's the other thought that I have, which is somewhat different. I mean, not just what can we do inside of Lincoln. I mean, sorry, I used to live in Lincoln. I lived here for 10 years. But also, what can we do to talk to state government, federal government, because if they don't do something, if they don't provide the funding to help us get things done, how is that going to happen? And the League of Women Voters would be important from that angle.
Yeah, and in a series of events after the keynote would actually buy us some time to be able to, look into some real practical approaches to this also. And I'm just curious, would this be worth something bringing up at a town meeting? I'm not sure even how often the town meets, but it seemed if we had the town behind us and some state legislatures behind us, or whoever it might be, we're really if we kick it off with a bang, we want to do something big over the next year. And we've got this great speaker coming in. This is kicking off 12 months of really getting things moving. That sort of high level, top down excitement might, just thinking outside the box here might help drive things.
Well, that's generally what I was kind of hoping would happen with the keynote, is that we get a distinguished professor in here. People don't get a chance to talk to someone or hear from someone like that every day. And in our planning, we figure out how are we going to leverage that.
Right.
While I haven't really talked about it, Amanda and I have talked about this continuing, not just through the fall and not just over the year, but this could be a regular thing for the town. But more, I guess, urgently or more near term rather, it's up to us to define and figure out what programs how are we going to program this stuff? What are we going to put on? What are we going to arrange? And speaking with Janice Setti, she was somewhat encouraging that Abode could do something in the fall.
Right.
And so the keynote could be, as you're describing, Mike, it could be the kickoff. We have a couple of events in the spring. In the summer, we might have one or two, and probably nothing in August. Pick up again in the fall, and it all's under this sustainability series umbrella, where that umbrella was kicked off with the kickoff, and hopefully with some excitement from that. So all of this is possible. It's up to us to, number one, figure out what do we want to do, and then to make it happen.
I mean, last fall in September, Abode did have a series, or they had a big webinar evening.
Yep.
And it would be a replay of that.
Yeah. We know what that leads to. We know how many people are going through it now. It's not huge. It's that, they're doing a good job. I would propose we have this keynote address right after the 22nd. And in the next week, we do, and maybe I'm looking at Doug's face on the screen, we organize this World Cafe at the library. And we give that a try. And that's momentum, because people come to a keynote address, and before they forget about it,
mm-hmm.
not a month later, but a few days later, they come and reflect on that. And I think that could be quite interesting.
That sounds like a good plan to me. It's kind of interesting. There are advantages to doing it after Earth Week. I think, well, as I commented earlier, I like the idea of maybe getting one of these World Cafe events started as part of the series. I agree that doing it quickly on the heels of the keynote could help build some momentum. And that works for me.
Okay.
Doug, does that work for you?
Yeah, that works for me.
I mean, we can do other things with the library too. That's not limiting.
The only thing that came to my mind is, at the time of the keynote, you're probably going to want to announce a full series. And
Yeah.
I agree that the first event is going to be a trial, and we don't know how it's going to float. We'll do our best, but the one that would be in September that would be with Abode is much more about the heat pump topics, I think. There's another thing at the library. They're going to have another meeting another week, the same week that they had last year, in the last week of September, which we can play into too. But one of the things that they said was the hottest topic for people that were part of the library was, surprisingly, the sustainable landscapes. They said they got more people to be responsive and interested in the topic than most of the other topics, for whatever that means.
Yeah. So let me make a couple of comments on that. And I recognize we've run over our 2-hour time. I apologize to everyone for that, but we're having such a good discussion. So just to elaborate on what Doug said. So the Rennie Cunningham at the library explained that the most popular sustainability event or sustainability related event that the library did last year was handing out these sustainable seedlings of sustainable local plants or trees that developed from seeds in the Concord Seed Library. And she said it was oversubscribed. They had too many requests. They couldn't fulfill them all. So what I was thinking is, yeah, let's, with the library's permission, we'll include that as one of the events. We could theoretically capture quite a few people's names and addresses from this and try and get them into the funnel, see if we can't convert them into doing things beyond a few plants. So the library, you know, they want to see this happen because it was so successful last year. And while this isn't directly in the path of the things we want to accomplish, I think if we utilize it to get more people involved and get them tied in, you use the plants to get them tied in to the bigger things we want them to do, that could be very positive. It's not the only event. We wanted to see these other things happen, but that's a possibility based on what we heard from Rennie at the library.
So you can germinate some interest is what you're saying.
Oh, just trying to seed some ideas.
Yes.
Another thing that was
Right.
suggested,
I think on that note, let's sort of virtually go around or go around the virtual table here for one last round of comments and try and wrap up so people can get to their own evenings. Anyone care to offer final comments or things we haven't talked about yet? Sharon?
I just wanted to let people know on the committee, I was approached by, I'm getting an echo. Maybe I need to turn my speaker down.
Seems okay now.
I was approached by one of the heat pump coaches that they're looking to have some heat pump open houses. So I've agreed to host anybody interested in looking at how geothermal actually works in real life. In January, we've got, they're planning to promote, and we'll see if people sign up. So who knows, might go somewhere, might fall on its face, but
When in January?
that was very interesting. And now let me turn my speaker up so I can hear you. Say again, Jerry.
When in January? Is there a date set?
So I offered Mondays. Just, you know, it's like,
Okay.
whatever. But I think it's like a one-on-one kind of thing, that because of the pandemic, it's like, you know, they can come, I say open house, but it would really be scheduled one person or couple party at a time. Because a lot of they've heard that people are hesitant because they're like, well, is it really going to work? You know, and so seeing a house that's really actually heated with geothermal.
Yeah. Well, that resonates because you were part of the EV Q&A last fall, as I was, and Jan expressed you, and I feel the same thing. There was quite a bit of interest there, and I thought that was very positive. We could do the same thing again, you know, with the boat. Presumably pretty much at any time, but maybe in the fall. Okay.
So I just thought our committee should know about that if we didn't already.
Yep. Thank you. Anyone else?
Jerry, just a real quick thing. Maybe we don't have to talk about it in detail now, but maybe in the next meeting. So I talked with a colleague of mine at National Grid, and he mentioned that the town of Concord had a very large meeting about National Grid's upcoming 3-year program and some of the incentives that are being offered and what CMLP is offering. It sounded like there were a lot of stakeholders on the call. He said it was a very busy call. I'm just curious if there might be an opportunity for the group or certain people in the group, depending on what they're involved with, to be invited to some of these meetings that might add some value to what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, I think I was unaware of this meeting. I don't know what it was or who was invited or who attended. I think you're right. It'd probably be good if some of us could attend some of these, but I think we have to find out about them. And I'm not sure I'm not sure why I was unaware. I don't know if anyone else was aware, but I certainly wasn't.
I use that meeting by example. It sounded like a very relevant meeting because it does talk about financing and incentives and tools that, you know, that we could also bring to the table. So
Right.
just something to keep in mind for the future.
I hadn't heard of a Concord specific meeting. I've heard of a bunch of meetings on the 3-year plan that has to get approved soon.
Okay. Any other final comments? All right. Well, thanks everyone for a very interesting discussion. Brad, thank you for a fascinating proposal. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
A second.
I'll mention it.
I just want to
Okay.
say,
Okay, you can make some comments before we actually vote, but this is strictly speaking, we're
I wanted
winding
to
down.
thank Brad again for bringing in his proposal. I thought it was really well constructed, and I think that there's some tweaks to it that can be done, but
Yeah.
it's a collaborative thing that we do and use a lot of the thinking that's in it. I think it could be very productive.
Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, there's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Right. Before we all disappear, I can see happy birthday behind Doug's face. And if it says birthday, happy birthday.
On my birthday today, it was on the 9th.
Okay.
So you're just continuing to celebrate.
Just balloon.
Bye-bye.
Balloon that
All
never
right.
dies.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
For our
happy
next
birthday.
meeting, do we know how it's going to be? You said
What's
it's
the date of the next meeting?
20th.
Okay.
It cannot be on the 20th because that's the date of the special town meeting
Thank you.
for
Oh,
school.
okay. I was just going by the 3rd Thursday of the month, but I guess it's back to another doodle poll, maybe.
I have to do it after the 20th, not before.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Is it going to be Zoom or in person or to be decided?
Given the trajectory of the cases, it's probably Zoom again. And again, apologies for the confusion this past week. I was trying to find a way to get us all together in person. Didn't quite work out. But thank you all for coming to the Zoom session. Another good meeting. So happy holidays, everybody. If I don't speak
Yep.
to you before then,
Thank you. You too.
have
Thanks
a
for
sustainable
all your hard
holiday,
work on
happy
this
holiday,
today.
Merry Christmas, New Year.
Yep.
And we'll see you in the new year, not before.